Welcome to today's Ocean Connector, an opportunity for the ocean community to come together, share ideas, learn, and make new connections. My name is Melanie Netto, and I'm the CEO of COVE. Before I begin by introducing our guests, I'd like to thank our Ocean Connector sponsors, Killam Properties and Cox & Palmer. I'd also like to thank our founding partner, Irving Shipbuilding. Today, you'll hear about MEOPAR's Mori project, which stands for Modular Ocean Research Infrastructure. We're really pleased to see the progress that Mori has undertaken with this project, as well as the partnership that's formed with Irving Shipbuilding. Mori has aimed to address a real challenge within the research community, which is accessing vessels to conduct their research. They've partnered with industry to create Mori and already have their first mission underway. And we're really happy to see this collaboration take place as part of COVE, and also look at the future opportunities for us to get engaged on the logistical side and management of the research infrastructure, as well as how we can engage more with industry as part of this project. With that being said, I'd like to move on and introduce MEOPAR, Hubble Industries, and Atlantic Towing. Enjoy the discussion.
Thank you, Melanie. It is my pleasure to be here today to moderate the COVE Ocean Connector. My name is Bridget Graham, and I'm the Operations Manager of the Marine Environmental Observation, Prediction, and Response Network of Centers of Excellence, also known as MEOPAR. I use she, they pronouns, and I'm joining you today from Mi'kma'ki. MEOPAR is hosted at Dalhousie University in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This territory is covered by the Treaties of Peace and Friendship, which Mi'kmaq, Maliseet, and Passamaquoddy peoples first signed with the British Crown in 1726. These treaties did not deal with surrender of land and resource, but in fact recognized Mi'kmaq and Maliseet title and established the rules for what was to be an ongoing relationship between nations. As we begin, we would like to acknowledge that we are living and working on the unceded and traditional lands of Indigenous peoples whose ongoing relationship with the land continue to this day. We are all treaty people, and we are responsible for not only upholding, but advancing reconciliation. On September 23rd, MEOPAR, Irving Shipbuilding, and COVE announced the launch of Mori, the Modular Ocean Research Infrastructure, and I'm excited to have partners from MEOPAR, Hubble Industries, and Atlantic Towing here with me today to discuss the project. Please welcome our panel today for the Ocean Connector, Dr. Doug Wallace, the Scientific Director at MEOPAR, Dylan Wells, the General Manager at Hubble Industries, and Tim Brownlow, the Director and Government and Industry Relations, the Director of Government and Industry Relations at Atlantic Towing Limited. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Dr. Wallace, let's start with you. Please tell me about Mori. How did the project come to be, and what is it trying to achieve? And the second part of the question, how did this infrastructure project fit with MEOPAR's role as a national network of researchers?
Well, Mori, of course, it stands for Modular Ocean Research Infrastructure. And maybe, Bridget, I'll start with the second part of the question first, if that's okay.
Sure.
So MEOPAR, it's a national network of centers of excellence. We connect with researchers and students and postdocs and also partners all across Canada. And a lot of what we do is about finding a coordinated Canadian approach to dealing with the ocean, understanding what's going on there, dealing with marine risk. And one thing in Canada is we realize we've got a heck of a lot of ocean real estate to deal with, right? And that's a real challenge for us. It's a great benefit for the country, but it also is a challenge to understand what's going on out there. And so MEOPAR's been in existence for 10 years and learned that the best way to deal with this much ocean real estate is by cooperation and coordination. And so therefore the support of Irving Shipbuilding, the partnership with Hubble Industries and Atlantic Towing, and also with COVE and other partners is an example of the sort of thing we do to tackle problems in the marine environment. Mori is tackling a major gap that we have in the ability to research and understand our ocean environment. Our capacity to access research vessels is really at a low point right now. And just at the point when the demands on ocean research are growing, as we know, the need for information is growing. And we think MEOPAR, together with the partners, figured this was a really good time to kind of think of a new way of doing things and try and establish a more flexible approach to accessing the ocean for research involving cooperation between academia, the private sector, and government in order to make the most of what we have and be quite innovative. So Mori is basically, it's not an incredibly new idea, but we're trying to put it together in new ways in a more comprehensive way. It's to modularize the sophisticated infrastructure we need to study the ocean so that it can be deployed on as wide a variety of vessels as possible, and not only on highly specialized, customized, specially built research vessels that our partner countries with which we work with, like Germany, France, USA, China, Korea, Australia, have access to. This approach is a little bit different. It's modularizing the science gear in order that we can forge effective collaborations with private sector ship owners and also with the military as well as the Coast Guard in order to get the job done. So it really fits with MEOPAR's approach to kind of working to build alliances and partnerships. The Irving partnership's been especially valuable in letting us realize that. And I think for us, it's already shown that we can do things differently and find new ways to access this crazy amount of ocean real estate that we have in this country.
Awesome. Thanks, Doug. That was great. I'm going to turn it over to Tim, and we're just wondering how Atlantic Towing became involved and what was your role in that?
Well, thank you, Bridget. It probably was about 8 years ago, and I met Doug at a function, I think, at Dalhousie, and we started talking, and then he reached out to another colleague of mine too, I think Tom Swift from our Newfoundland office, and we discussed putting on, and I'll make it sound very simplistic, I know it's much more complicated than this, some water sampling equipment on the Atlantic Condor as she was going back and forth through the deep Panuke field. And then we started talking about other opportunities that we would like to take a look at with Doug, maybe doing some scientific cruises. And then we came to be using the Atlantic Condor for the scientific cruise for not only the MEOPAR cruise, but for the OERA cruise earlier on in the year. So it was a long road Doug and I went down, but it eventually came to be, and we're very, very happy that a Canadian-owned, Canadian-crewed, Canadian-flagged, Canadian-built vessel was used off our coast to do some research this summer.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. And Dylan, we're wondering about Hubble Industries. We know that they have a longstanding history of designing and building specialized deck equipment for ocean science, for oil and gas, national defense, and general shipbuilding industries. Can you tell us about the custom A-frame assembly design and manufactured for this project?
Yeah, absolutely, Bridget. So Hubble, we're a maker of winches and cranes, and we sell all around the world to ocean researchers, like Doug said, in countries from Asia to Europe to the Middle East, South America. And when we first, I guess, heard about this project, we were so excited because it was right in our backyard, and it's really a connection of people, of ship owners, of ship operators, of scientists, of government working together in a way that's, I think, pretty special and pretty hard to do. And so we were able to bring our expertise in equipment design, in deck equipment design, to the table, and work with this team to really envision what would be a functional, safe, useful, easy to mobilize type of system that could be used and reused on ships of opportunity. So our A-frame is based on some equipment that you'd see sort of in the offshore energy industry, and was customized a little bit for this mission, but being the first, really the first iteration, I think, of the Mori project, it's sort of like the first step. And so we took really what we know works really well for certain applications and modified it a little bit to do a few specific things for this summer. And really, we've got a ton of ideas sort of on paper for what we can do with this team and with our expertise for future missions coming up in years to come.
Awesome. Thanks, Dylan. So Doug, I'm going to turn it back to you. And we're wondering about what sort of equipment is being used for Mori so far. Is there a particular field of ocean science the equipment is for? And what do you see moving forward in the future?
Well, as Dylan noted, what we've done this year is really assembled things that we almost had in our backyard, adapted them for the purposes of testing and demonstration, working with Atlantic Towing, and use that as a basis for moving forward. So what we've got at the moment, it's a little bit of a hodgepodge. We've got a couple of container labs from Dalhousie. We were loaned a very useful Rosette CTD launch system from DFO, various winches from Natural Resources Canada, as well as CTD from DFO. And we put all that together on the deck of the Atlantic Condor, and together with industry-operated, remotely operated vehicle, and we made it work for science. And through that, learned quite a bit, I think, as Tim might say in a moment. But it's really a matter of going forward. And the key thing for research these days, the research that's done in the ocean these days internationally is highly sophisticated. So we've got to modularize all the highly sophisticated gear that's typically used on specialized vessels by our colleagues in other countries and get it to work in a modular form. And it's going to require some significant design effort. First order of business might be a sophisticated CTD launch and recovery system for use. That's obviously very urgently needed for next year. But also customized laboratories, more modularized winches and freezer containers and stuff like that. So we're just starting, Bridget, but a long way to go. But the key is infrastructure that can be flexibly used, not just in Atlantic Canada ultimately, but across the country. There might be a piece of gear we'll design and build that might be used in Atlantic Canada one year and might be needed on the West Coast the following year. And there's no reason with this approach, as opposed to moving an entire vessel, which can also be done, but it's costly, why we can't design equipment like that can be used. And in the words of a German shipbuilder I knew, sadly passed away a few years ago, Dirk Lindenau, he ran a shipbuilding wharf in Kiel, Germany when I was living there. And he said, ohne Infrastruktur es geht nicht, which means without infrastructure, you can't do anything, basically. And that's true. So we have to focus now on figuring out what infrastructure is needed for multidisciplinary research, figure out with our industry partners how to build it, how to design it, how to build it, and work with Atlantic Towing over this upcoming project to test it out and see how well it works so that we're better positioned for applying this across the country.
Awesome. Thanks, Doug. That's great. It's so exciting to be a part of this. Tim, the Atlantic Condor is the first vessel to be outfitted for Mori. And is there an opportunity or future plans for more vessels to be outfitted? So I'll start with that, and then there's a second part to that question, but I'll let you answer that one first.
Okay, thanks, Bridget. As Doug said, with this, we classify it as a plug-and-play system where the containers are put on the back of the vessel. And that's what these vessels were built for. These vessels were built for the oil and gas industry. And with a little bit of a downturn in the industry here locally, it's a perfect fit for going forward with Mori and other agencies. Yes, the Atlantic Condor was the vessel we used this year, but it doesn't mean that's the vessel we have to use going forward. There's other vessels in our fleet that could be modified to accommodate this gear. The beauty about the Condor is that she is a flat deck back. She's a PSV, platform support vessel. She has a 15-ton heave compensated crane, as well as a ROV platform, remote operated vehicle. So it was perfect for these missions. Going forward, we might not need some of that gear, so we could use other vessels. And taking it forward, like with the Atlantic Hawk or something, or Atlantic Eagle, or the Kingfisher, the Osprey, whatever the case may be. So those are the vessels we're also looking at. And Bridget, you got a second part to that question?
I do, yeah. So just curious about how the crew of the Atlantic Condor adjusted to supporting science and what was learned in the first two cruises, would you say?
Well, First off, I want to say from all accounts, there were very successful cruises, which we were very happy that everything turned out great. And we managed to dodge a hurricane. We went out and dropped a few bobs in the water, and then came back and then went back out again. I guess the biggest thing we learned is that the crews working together, our crews really enjoyed learning something new, helping other people do something new. So, and I think the science crews enjoyed working with our crews. We're very helpful. There's certain ways we do business. There's toolbox meetings for safety, risk assessments that are necessary before we do any work. And I think this is something we brought new to the scientific community about how we do work. And again, us helping them do their work was very interesting. I know some of the workers were very interested in the coring and in the Rosetta and how it's going over. And I guess the beauty of our vessel too is we have thrusters, so we can walk the ship sideways. So we don't have to continuously go backwards and forwards. We can walk it sideways to do different experiments too. So a lot of gear available that probably some other ships might not have, but I don't want to talk about other ships. I'm here to talk about our ships. So.
Awesome. So this is also for you, Tim. It just keeps going. More questions for you.
Well, actually, can I just jump in there, Bridget, if it's
sure.
Okay? From I wasn't on board, unfortunately. My group was, but they didn't need me for some reason. I don't understand it. But the cruise, our cruise, was led by Daria Atamanchuk from Dalhousie University, who's a young a researcher. And first of all, this provided Daria, or Dasher as we know her as, with an opportunity to lead a research cruise from Canada instead of our common practice. Actually, for the 10 years that I've been back in Canada after coming back to Canada from Germany, is to kind of book places typically on foreign research vessels of our collaborators, and so whether it's Irish or German or French, which is really good. It's really good, for example, for me as a senior researcher with a well-established international network, I can get access. But for more junior researchers, there's a real blockage there for accessing foreign research vessels. And of course, they're not always available when you need them, and they're not always available to study things, Canadian priorities. So having the ability to work with a Canadian operated, owned, and crewed vessel out of Halifax is a real luxury. And I know Dasha has the ability to design and lead her own research cruise with her scientific partners was really important for career development as well. And yes, we learned a lot from working with working with the Atlantic Condor crew, and a lot of useful lessons for how to do science on industry vessels. And things next year will be a little bit different, I think, Tim.
Yeah.
Awesome. So Tim and Doug, we're just going to talk about the last cruise, or the two cruises, a little bit. So Mori has completed its first two missions on the Scotian Shelf and the Slope in support of the Offshore Energy Research Association of Nova Scotia's research program, and in support of the Ocean Frontier Institute's research on carbon sinks. So could one of you tell us a little bit about what was done on the last cruise, and what's planned for next year? How will Mori be used, for example?
This year we did the OERA cruise, which was primarily ROV based, and that worked very well with basically sediment core sampling, as Tim said. We deployed very, very sophisticated mooring off the Scotian Slope, a sea cycler. It's an underwater profiling winch with acoustic telemetry. It's basically a highly comprehensive observatory with about, I don't know, lost count, maybe 25 different sensors on it, which a lot of which is technology made in Nova Scotia, by the way, or in Canada. So a lot of Canadian technology built into that, and we deployed and recovered it. And we did a lot of CTD work, or Dasha's group did a lot of CTD work all the way out to the Gulf Stream, which reportedly was pretty nice to get out to the Gulf Stream. Next year, I think there's almost 6 cruises planned, which shows the demand, and still probably need a little bit of extra financing to make all of them happen, but we'll get there. And those are cruises, again, in support of the Ocean Frontier Institute's research program on carbon sinks, but also work with colleagues at Université Québec à Rimouski to deploy a marine acoustic observatory in the Gulf of St. Lawrence, a MEOPAR supported cruise with financial support also from DFO, also in the Gulf of St. Lawrence, and this big mooring deployment in the Labrador Sea in the summer. And then really interesting is interest from south of the border is potential interest from a group of researchers from all across the US who want to study fog on the Grand Banks and near Sable Island. And they've visited the ship and I guess we're pretty impressed, Tim. And that you had more contact with them than I did actually, but that looks promising as well, I think.
Yes, it did. And exactly what Doug said. That's what I said.
Awesome. Thank you both. So well put.
Yeah, as Doug said, it was they're very interesting to have the group come in from Notre Dame and from the United States to come in and tour the vessel. The timing was perfect. We had just come back with the Mori cruise, and hats off to Rodrigo and Doug for introducing us to these folks. They're very promising. They want to use the vessel. And as Doug said, we're in discussions on 4 or 5 other ones with Mori as well. So we see next year as being a banner year, and again, learning from our experiences together going forward. It was smooth, but I'm sure it'll be even smoother next year.
Awesome. Thank you. Dylan, I'm curious of what you see the future capabilities of Mori, and how far can the modular concept go, do you think?
Good question, Bridget. I mean, I think it'll go as far as the collaboration can take it, really. I guess I keep saying this, but it's really unique and really key that these stakeholders from different perspectives get together. I don't think that, on our own, Hubble could devise a system that's going to do what the ship owners and the scientists need, but together, I think some of the biggest, most complex types of systems that ships are designed for, research ships are designed for, like long piston cores, large specialized equipment, can be deployed successfully. Science can be done in a modular way. I don't see this concept having any limits other than through good training, good practices of maintenance. There's aspects to this that are new that need to be figured out because it's sort of unique systems for each cruise. But with the team, the way that MEOPAR has set up this Mori team, I don't see really any major limits to the ideas that there's been lots of good ideas, let me say that, and we've had really good conversations about how to do them. So I guess you don't get me on here wanting to say there's limits anyway, but really it's a great concept, and it's through the teamwork between the different stakeholders that it will be successful.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think we've also, Bridget, learned some other things. I mean, there's the hardware, the infrastructure itself, but it's how you use it and how you manage it is also going to be a challenge. And that's where, for example, the discussions we've had already with COVE have been really positive about, as John said, how do you maintain this? How do you organize the allocation of this stuff? These are all big questions, and we actually don't have a national system in Canada for doing this. We have some really good examples across the country of how to access ship time for research. For example, there's an organization, RIFOMA, in Rimouski, based in Rimouski, that looks after the Coriolis II for the University of Quebec, mainly. We have Amundsen Science, based at the University of Laval. These are all not-for-profits linked to a university. But really, we have no national system especially for accessing research vessels outside of government, and we're going to need to develop that. And what we've learned already, even just in the first 2 cruises, we've learned that we all face similar problems, like how do you insure gear? Turns out every organization does it, but they all do it independently. And again, we do have to insure this stuff when it goes on vessels. And if we can find out a good way to insure equipment which can be used by all Canadian organizations, that's going to be a step forward just on itself, let alone the organization and the sharing agreements that we have to implement. So there's quite a lot of additional work has to be done, but again, through partnership, and that's certainly what MEOPAR is all about, is about coordination and partnership. which doesn't mean leading, it means partnering, right? And through doing that with organizations like COVE and with really kind of innovative private sector partners, I'm pretty sure we can get it done. It's quite a lot of work ahead.
Awesome. I'm going to open this question up to everyone. Do you see any additional opportunities for industry, academia, and government to participate in the development of Mori in Canada? So we've discussed this a lot, but if there's anything else that you'd like to say about that.
Don't everyone jump at once.
What do you think, Dylan? What do you think?
Well, like you said, Doug, you've already got a busy schedule for next year, and the systems are not in place right now to do it. So the short answer is a definite 100% needed. Yeah.
I definitely do, and this is something that Doug and I've talked about many times. As Doug mentioned, he's relied a lot on government to use their government vessels to help do these cruises, and now proving that a private sector company can come along and do these cruises, I think could help take some of the load off of the government vessels, not only for ourselves but for other companies that come in and help with cruises, whether they be here on the East Coast, the West Coast, or wherever they be.
And I think there's also, you know, we, of course, here in Halifax, the Arctic and offshore patrol ships are being built by Irving Shipbuilding, and they are designed to carry some modular equipment. And there's a recent example, I guess, with the Harry DeWolf going through the Northwest Passage, towing a Halifax-made sonar modular. So I'm really hoping that here in Halifax, well, not only in Halifax, but certainly we could have this discussion in Halifax where we have the kind of concentration of those sectors, where we could figure out a kind of joint dual use approach to the design of this equipment, including there's probably a lot of commonality between needs of Coast Guard and Royal Canadian Navy that can be explored with the research community. I'm really hoping that happens. Doesn't typically happen. It needs a little bit of energy and input, but I think it's starting to happen. Tim, do you feel that there's more discussion about this?
I think there is, Doug, and I think you're correct. I think maybe in the future, I mean, maybe as early as this coming summer, that we get some Coast Guard folks and maybe a few Navy folks on our vessels while we're doing a cruise to show how it does work and how they could use that on the AOPS vessels, with the two last AOPS vessels being Coast Guard vessels as well. Although I don't want to take up too much of my precious bunk space with Navy and Coast Guard, but if it helps the overall team, then that's exactly what we'll do.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, that was the end of my questions. So that was great. Lovely opportunity to chat with the three of you. And I'd like to thank you all for joining me today to discuss Mori and this exciting project. The partnership between our organizations is an excellent example of research and industry working together to advance our understanding of the ocean. So thank you to the three of you. Thank you to everybody tuning in and for joining us for this month's Ocean Connector. And I'd like to turn it over to Melanie.
Thank you to our panelists. For more information about Mori, you can visit www.meopar.ca or visit our website at coveocean.com. If you want to hear more about our ocean connectors or thought leadership in the ocean community, you can follow our YouTube channel or visit us on social media. Thank you.